can this technology assist us in having better markets, better information? Can investors really go across the border because of technology?
Absolutely. Yeah, I believe very strongly that technology can play a very strong role in cross-border investments, because now we are on a platform where we can interact with professionals across the continent, across the world. Gone are those days that you have to post reports. You can email reports now, you can WhatsApp reports to people. Technology is a very important component in integrating markets for the future, no doubt about it. Also, it has been mentioned on this webinar that the way we share information, the way we share data can become easier with technology. We have tools online, we have apps, we have so many things that we can use as professionals that were not available 5, 10, 15 years ago. So technology is a huge part of that. But in spite of that, we are talking about real estate, where the surveyors call terra firma. We deal with land, and land is immovable. So for most of the transactions you need to do in real estate, you need to physically either be on site at some point in the life of that asset, or you need to interact with an asset that is not movable. So on one hand, technology can help, especially with information flow and with a lot of the things you can do remotely. We don't have to travel again to have meetings. In fact, people now have site meetings virtually. Okay, so long as you have the key parties in place, you can share reports, you can share drawings and things like that. So a huge part of our hindrances can be taken away by technology. A few things that we need to also look at, especially in West Africa, is hindrances dealing with language. West Africa has about 15 member states. And out of those 15 member states, 8 of them are Francophone. Okay, if you can't speak French, it will be very difficult for you to do business in a Francophone country. Most of us on this call might not be able to speak French, and that in itself is a hindrance. Okay, a majority of West African states are French speaking. So somehow we need to be able to reach across the aisle and begin to cross-fertilize ideas and even learn each other's languages. We have members of the West African states that speak Portuguese. For example, Cape Verde is a Portuguese colony. So, you know, how many of us can speak that language as well? So that is something that we all need to start looking at in the future as we integrate. Also, our systems, our professional systems are different. Okay, if you go to a place like Cameroon or Cote d'Ivoire, you hardly find people or professionals called estate surveyors, because in their curriculum, in the French curriculum, you only have professions like architecture and engineering. Estate surveying and surveying generally is an English, is a British related system. And that's why, you know, countries like Nigeria and Ghana can integrate better, because we have common systems based from our common heritage. So these are some of the things that I think AfRES can do to integrate us. We can continue to debate this, and we can continue to have cross-fertilization of ideas. I think it's a very good opportunity to interact. Also, we must also begin to now invite other members from other countries as well, as we expand our reach and our influence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Otegbulu.
I'm with you.
Yeah, are you ready to speak to us on what I mentioned then? Professor Akujuru's comments. And there are also further comments about title, that land holding is a problem in Africa.
Can you repeat Professor Akujuru's questions again? It's not very clear about oil industry problem.
No, it's
Can
not,
you
it's not
make
an
it
oil
clearer?
industry problem.
I could use question.
But he said Nigeria is dependent on oil.
What do you? Okay.
He said Nigeria is dependent on oil, and as a result of that, there will be oversupply in the market because many people will lose jobs. Yes, there will be oversupply.
Of what?
Of houses.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. In a way, Nigeria is a mono economy, depending mainly on oil for its national reserve. But there will be oversupply of houses in the lower and middle income area. What will be lacking is the capacity to pay. But a lot of people need housing. And what happens is if capacity to pay becomes less, rents will go down. Because unless you say that because there's no industry is low, that people will not want houses again. Yes, I agree. To an extent, it will be difficult to let property. But even the minimum rent you added to pay, some people will be unable to pay it. That is one aspect. But basically, there will be a reduction in rent. Rent will fall. Most of the economy has actually cannot support people's ability to pay for rents. And even though there will be demand, but that demand will not be effective because of lack of capacity to pay for them too. So other people will start sharing properties or start changing the way they take properties now to have. But shelter is something we cannot do without in our life. So whether we have one or not, either we squat or we share apartment with somebody or we look for a small apartment to live in. But all I know that rent will go down and the capacity to pay will not be there, and then there may be a lot of voice in parties, but not as much as we anticipate because so many people the market is under supply. But if it's got to upper end properties, yes, I agree with him. There will be supply and there will be a lot of voice in that market. But on the lower end, because there will be what you call shift, what you call filtering down process. When properties markets, when there's no money, people from the upper end will move down to the lower end, to the middle end of the property market, and people from the middle end will go down to the lower end, and still those places will fill. So the gap will be more at the upper end property market than the lower end property market. So those void of oversupply will be in the upper end, not in the lower end, due to filtering down process in the market, in the property market. Thank you. Okay. Then about land holding system. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, continue. No, I have a question for Mr. Adetiji. Mr. Adetiji, sir.
Yes, please.
Yes, on this issue about surviving the pandemic, business-wise. I know I've heard you before that you were managing so many properties, and within a week, almost all your tenants came to drop their keys. And Professor Akudju has also talked about oversupply in the market. When there is such oversupply, the existing tenants are dropping their keys and vacating the properties. How do businesses survive? Whether it's in Ghana, whether it's in Nigeria, I know you have experience in different jurisdictions. How do businesses survive such an environment?
I think one of the contributors has said about cyclic nature of the property market, and I must say that even cyclic nature of life, even when things become so hopeless, it's only a matter of time and things begin to turn around. What we as professionals should do is that we have been so distant from those who formulate policy in each of our countries and those who implement them, because there are fundamental dynamics that will determine whether a particular country survives better and faster under this pandemic and the other one. For example, take a look at your growth of population. Where population is managed, things will be okay. Where corruption is less and people believe in output, productivity, then you have what they call inclusive economy. What I'm trying to say is that how to actually navigate through this coming crisis we'll actually have to dwell on the fundamentals guiding each of the countries in West Africa. There are things that we know on economic theory and practice that nobody can actually throw to the dustbin. If you do not produce, you cannot have a strong currency. If you don't believe in saving, whenever and if only just whenever any crisis comes, you are back to square zero. And once the purchasing power of a populace fall below certain level, then commodities, products that are high value in prices, you cannot have buyers. So once we have this knowledge, once we retool, once we throw away the old things of doing things, business as usual, we are very sure that this cycle will pass and will emerge stronger and better.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Adediji. Savio Kobo.
Yes,
you are the chair of Valuers and Estate Surveying Division of the Ghana Institution of Surveyors. And in fact, I also saw a question in the chat from a Nigerian on how we can register in Ghana. So invariably, people are already thinking about doing businesses across borders. So how can we fast track how can we fast track breaking down these boundaries that exist within the African continent or within the West African region? I mean, in terms of professionals now, service providers.
Yes,
you come to Nigeria to value, we go to Ghana to value. How can we fast track that integration?
Thank you very much. The only time I attempted to come to Nigeria to value, I was told that it was a criminal offense, that you can be arrested and jailed. And so if Nigeria is saying that, Ghana will also raise the same wall. And I think in the light of the African Continental Free Trade, I think it's been already said that if we don't start the process of integrating ourselves, then we may lose out and we'll continue to talk probably across virtual divide. Because realize that real estate and infrastructure are great movements of capital. And so if a region integrates, what we're saying, especially for the real estate, what we're saying that there will be easy movement of capital across the nations. For example, after you've developed a beautiful edifice in Lagos, because of the linkage integration, your next option will probably look at Accra or Liberia or Abidjan. And so capital will begin moving. And so the integration process will have to. And then if you want to integrate, how do you integrate a leg and an arm? It's not possible, because like I think it's been said already that across African countries, real estate professionals, probably practitioners, probably have different orientation and training. We taking hours from British, probably it's easy to align with Nigeria, but before I get to Nigeria, I have to cross Togo, I have to cross Lomé, and I get to, but real estate is locational based. So even in linking, I may have to link over. So it's important that we start the linkages. Now, if we are going to link and across our nations in Africa, even the practitioners have different orientation. It's going to be a linking program. What I've observed that when we talk about real estate, it is not just an industry, but it's a sector of economy, because very huge. The practitioners and the players are very enormous. But I can quickly divide into probably the business side of real estate and then the advisory side. And most of our professionals are within the advisory side. And sometimes the professionals in terms of advisory want to move, and then we leave out the business side of it, probably the developers and probably the agents to some extent. We leave them out, and therefore you are moving one hand and you leave another hand or a leg behind. What I've seen is that we need to create umbrellas of real estate professionals across Africa, across the regions, where it becomes easy to integrate at that level. Fortunately, in Ghana, we have this, what we call a chamber of construction, where Professor Mate is now the president, where all the real estate practitioners, that is the advisory, the academicians, the developers, the suppliers of material, and all have come together under one umbrella known as the Chamber of Construction. At that level, when the chamber is moving, an engineer will not feel left out. A planner will not feel left out, because sometimes when we talk about AfRES in Ghana, you find a lot of the evaluation estate surveyors participating. The land surveyors are more linked to FIG, and then the quant surveyors are moved to AAQS. So we realize that we are all looking at real estate, but we all have different orientations. And so we should begin to look at creating umbrellas that will put all these groups together. Then for us, we'll be able to integrate. Because like I said, if we integrate properly, then capital will move. And once capital is moving, every country that requires that capital, like you see some of the shopping malls that you see in Accra and in Lagos, what it means that the next option will be looking at Liberia and those things. But if you want such a capital to move, then you'll be compelled to look at your land tenure system. You'll be compelled to look at your registration system. You'll be compelled to look at your, the whole tax regime in terms of real estate, and gradually then we'll integrate. And so there's a lot of work to do, but if we don't integrate, then all that we are saying, we'll continue to say it and will not see the result. But the integrator will have to start where within the practitioners, we start the integration. Then I can go to Lagos and do evaluation, and I will not be arrested. Thank you very much.
I can assure you, you won't be arrested. But probably you will need to have me as a partner to so that
yes. Yeah. So I think in terms of the registration, yeah. For here, one, you have to be properly registered as a company with the Registrar General in Ghana, and it becomes a Ghanaian company. And then once it becomes a Ghanaian company, then you come to the institution of surveyors to take license. But I can assure you that if you come as it is, you may not qualify. So like you rightly said, you may need a Ghanaian partner. And it will be beautiful to see big firms that are doing well to find ourselves across the continent. Why are there no Nigerian firms in Ghana and Ghanaian firms doing partnership and sharing best practices and building each others up, because this is the process of integration. Then we can approach the African government that we need a land system that cuts across regions. We need a registration system that cuts across that, so that the system begins to integrate. Probably if West Africa see even the potential, this eco that we've talked about, there will be a need and urgency for the eco as a currency to be realized. But probably because the politicians see it different way, whilst we ourselves, whilst the practitioners are also looking at it this way. And even when practitioners are going, we go as, let me say, the advisory side, leaving the business side, or the business side will go and leaving the practitioner. But there's a time we should integrate within, and then have umbrellas, we can talk. And then it becomes, I may not need to travel to Nigeria because the data will be available to do evaluation because of the linkage.
Thank you, Surveyor Kobold. Thank you.
Thank you.
But while Surveyor Kobold was talking, he also left out the academics. So, Surveyor Gavu. So, Surveyor Gavu, we can't talk of integrating the market, integrating West African market without integrating the academia. The curriculum also needs to be integrated. So what are you doing at the academics? You are still lecturing. How can we have create that synergy?
Yeah.
How can we have a curriculum that is standard? You know, everywhere you go, whether francophone, anglophone, even within the anglophone countries, Nigeria, Ghana, you know, how do we resolve all that problem? Because we seem to have problem about data, problem about title, problem about academic. We cannot talk about everything in one fell swoop, but let's do the bit we can today. So just on the curriculum, how do we resolve that?
Good. I want us to look at it from this dimension. This COVID-19 has also exposed how deficient some parts of our academic institutions have been in terms of ICT and development. So we realize that many universities are saying, let's go online, let's push everything online. Now the issue is that we are transforming how we used to do things in the traditional face-to-face encounters with our students, and we are now pushing it online, which doesn't also work that way. You know, as lecturers, we need also to understand how the online system works and how to present information to students in a virtual environment. So the fact that we normally stood in front of our students cannot just be replicated there, and there are ways in which those should be done, and we should be properly oriented. There are many professionals who take lecturers or who do want to do this kind of virtual online teaching stuff. We need to be properly oriented as lecturers so that we'll be able to deliver and do it well, not just what we think we can do. That is one aspect of it. In terms of linking the various curricula, I think it will be very difficult to say that let us have a template, something one size fits all. Actually, universities are put up for various roles. So you can have a science and technology university, you could have, I mean, so we have various aspects. And for me, I don't think we should think of that. We should look at the quality of what we do. And that is what changes the dynamics. If you do your things right, if I present a transcript from my university, it should be accepted because I trust the system. The reason why we are crying for this so-called integrated curriculum and that the thing should be standard is that among ourselves we don't trust ourselves. So I pick a transcript for, or I pick a certificate from University A and I take it to University B. University B does not trust what I'm doing because they think, no, I don't deserve this, or there's something wrong with this, the system. So, I mean, what actually needs to be done in terms of curriculum building is to learn from best practices, and there are many best practices. If we pick in terms of, even if we just pick real estate departments across sub-Saharan Africa, there are many best practices. And best practices, what they do is very simple, but we overlook them. The key stakeholders in education are our students. They are the majority. Most of the time, we relegate them to the background. For me, if anybody enters the university from age 16, 17, I consider that person as an adult, and that person should be able to reason on their own. So that transition should be made clear. Because at times we view those stakeholders that they care about. So we think they cannot make an input to curriculum, which is a fallacy. These students should be encouraged to have these feedback loops within the system, so that probably every year we get those feedbacks to improve the system. I mean, some universities are trying and are doing that, but that feedback loop is not being seen. So people don't take them serious. One other aspect also is industry. Industry always cries that, yeah, universities churn out students and they are not relevant to us. We have to now retrain them. The issue is what is industry doing in terms of inputs? Because if you don't put anything inside, you don't get the output you want. So if we have those kind of collaborations, and industry also should be prepared to put money where their mouth is. So if you want a quality graduate, you should be prepared to at times also fund research in some of these institutions to promote them. And these are the ways we should do it. So meaning students, staff of the various universities and industry should sit and talk and that is a way we can also promote such aspects, and that is how we can build curriculum.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Mate.
Hello.
Hello. Yes. We've had discussion for about 1 hour 30 minutes now, and the program was advertised for 1 hour 30 minutes. I can see that some of the participants are in Tanzania, Kenya. They are far deep into the night. I don't think we should keep them. So I will just hand over to Professor Mate, the past president of AfRES, at this stage. So you are on, Professor Mate.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, it has been a good night. This program has not only been exciting, but very educative. And I believe that we've all been educated. We assembled hosts, the panelists who are gurus in their own field, and we all agree that they've done justice to the issues that they were confronted with. All of them have distinguished themselves very well. I would want to express appreciation to our friends from the South African chapter, East African chapter, and from London, European Wrestling Society, and indeed from the rest of the world for joining us. It is a joy having all of you around to participate and then to send the questions which were answered by the panelists. I would say that one thing that has run through this discussion is the issue of data. Data is very important. The quality of decisions that we make depends on data. So if data is not available or data is not reliable, then conclusions that we draw or decisions that we make would be inadequate and will be unreliable. So it's important that the issue of data we take seriously and see how we can build data, up-to-date data that are very reliable and that have been validated to enable us take decisions on them. One thing that also came up is how do we integrate as professionals? So the issue was asked, how do we register in Ghana or in Nigeria to undertake evaluation of professional practice? I recall that in AfRES, we tried to come up with a project which we called African Viral Project or Valuers Without Border. It didn't see much light, but I hope with this discussion, we'll have to take it up and see how we integrate so that Kofi Kobold can move to Nigeria with the necessary support without fear and do his evaluation. Similarly, Kunle can also come to Ghana or South Africa and do his evaluation with the necessary support from colleagues there. I must say that as humans, we are in motion. There's always motion of matter, and every situation has its own peculiarities. It is therefore important that we understand the times and the trends and tailor our practice to ensure that we meet the market dynamics or the dynamics of the time in order to remain relevant. If we don't understand this, we will not be relevant. And mind you, there is technology that is catching up. So if we don't change our ways of doing it, we understand and then tailor our situation, technology will step in and then will become irrelevant. So I must say that this is an eye-opener. We have heard all the recommendations that were made, and I believe that AfRES is going to take it up, work on it, and ensure that we become a better society, useful to all our member countries. Time is fast spent, so I don't want to talk much, but I express appreciation to all who participated. We really enjoyed you, and we value your time that we spent with us. And then lastly, to our moderator, Niyi, you have been wonderful. We thank you for the efforts you made in putting this program together, and by hosting and then